We can, as we're doing these things, we continuously work out harder. We continuously push ourselves just a little bit further, a little bit longer, and that slowly pushes our lactate threshold to the point when the lactate threshold kind of overcomes, and we can't really continue going as hard, and the workouts decrease. During the workout, the intensity decreases, duration decreases. If we can continue pushing just a little bit further and further, a little bit harder and harder, we can push that lactate threshold further and further out, so we can go harder, we can go longer, we can get a better better cardio workout, we can improve our bodies even further. Increased breakdown and transport of fatty acids, FA, and IMTGs, intramuscular triglycerides, so the actual breakdown of these fatty acids and muscle fat and the transport of them for energy. Cardio actually improves the use of the fat and the transport of the fat in the muscles through the blood for energy. So cardio can actually help break down that fat, utilize that fat, which can then reduce the fat content on our bodies. Increased number and density of capillaries. Again, more blood to the muscles, more nutrients, pushing harder, pushing longer. Increased mitochondrial density. Mitochondria is the powerhouse of our cells, especially during cardio and endurance performance. Increasing more of them, increasing the density, actually helps us push a little bit harder, creates more working, i.e. muscle factories for us. Increased plasma volume, getting more actual stuff in our blood, creating more fluid that can actually help deliver those nutrients, that oxygen to the working muscles so we can continuously go longer. Increased left ventricle, one of the 4 chambers of our heart size. Cardio increases the left ventricle, which helps increase the cardiac output. If we can slowly increase the size of our left ventricle, decrease heart rate, increase stroke volume, the amount of blood that can be pushed through from the left ventricle, we actually have a better cardiac output, which means we can push more blood out, more nutrients, more oxygen, and still have a lower heart rate, especially a resting heart rate. Increased ligament and tendon strength, which as we get older, we need. We tend to get sore longer. We tend to be more prone to injuries. Cardio can actually help, and endurance training can help prevent those issues from happening. Increased ATP, phosphocreatine, and glycogen stores. Again, energy substrates that we use to continuously move, to push harder. If we can increase those substrate stores in our bodies, we can use that extra energy to go longer, to go harder. Decreased resting heart rate, like I said, and decreased fat mass and or weight loss. And again, this list is not exhaustive. There's many, many, many more things to cardio training that we can all take away from. Here's one quick study that was done in the International Journal of Sports Nutrition in 2006. The idea was increased dietary protein with high-intensity aerobic training and resistance training. Essentially, for those of you who train at Body Track, you do the high-intensity aerobic and resistance training combination actually improve body fat distribution and cardiac risk factors. So if we look at the study, we will see that the circle, the line with the circles, is our control group. This group received no benefits, no special diet. They were on a traditional diet, and they were also no resistance training or cardio. So they were just monitored. So as you can see, if you look on the left, body weight, no change. If you look at the group with the squares, they were a cardiovascular group with a traditional diet. So again, the traditional diet looking at more of like the food guide pyramid, doing cardio. So they were not resistance training. They were not on a specialized higher protein type diet. They were just on a traditional diet with cardio, and they have lost some weight and changes in body fat. The group with the triangles was resistance trained and cardio with a balanced diet. A little bit more protein, a little bit better distribution of carbs and fats. They resistance trained and they did cardio. They lost the greatest amount of weight and body fat. So just more evidence that having a balanced, proper diet with the proper macronutrients, resistance training, lifting weights, and cardio will improve the best with weight loss and fat mass loss. We need to address some myths first. Myth 1, carbs are the enemy. Yes, it is true that if we overconsume carbohydrates, they will be stored as triglycerides and they will be stored as fat, and we can continue to get heavier and fatter if we do not use those carbs. But carbs are our rate-limiting fuel. That means when we run out of them, we have to use something else. Our glycogen stores is stored muscle glucose. The carbohydrates that we consume during our meals and during our workouts, we need carbohydrates because we use them almost immediately for most, if not all, types of activities. They give us the necessary, easy access energy. So whether that is a bowl of rice or a sports drink, they are necessary for our workouts. So if in theory and in practice, if you consider it, if you are going to intake carbs for your energy, then you should be able to increase your energy because a calorie is essentially energy. More energy, you should be able to push a little bit harder, enhance your workouts. The enhanced workouts hopefully will lead to the enhanced performance. And again, we're looking at performance across the entire lifespan, across the entire day, not just in the hour that we're working out. And then enhanced health and body compositional changes. So one leads to the other, leads to the other. Myth number 2, if I just eat less, I will lose weight. Nutrition and fitness, unfortunately, if everything was that easy, I would not be here. Most of us will be able to handle this on our own and see all the great effects that we want. But it's not that simple. Energy intake equals energy expenditure. So the food I take in equals the work that I put out. That's energy balance. A reduction of energy intake, essentially, if I reduce taking in food, if I reduce taking in nutrients and calories, that can lead to weight loss as long as I'm expending more than I'm taking in. But that reduction of energy, carbs, proteins, fats, minerals, vitamins, also can lead to nutrient deficiencies and unfortunately an overall poor diet. So just because we're eating less and we're seeing those smaller changes immediately doesn't mean that in the next 2 months we're going to see those changes, because a poor diet, if we're not getting nutrients that we need for every single one of our cells, we will see decreased performance in those workouts and in our daily life, which can equal and lead to reduced changes in body weight. Reduced changes mean you start losing weight and then you may plateau, or you may start to gain weight back because your body's trying to compensate. These are small things that we don't think about because we're looking at the immediate results. We need to look further and deeper and longer into them. If I'm going to reduce, am I going to properly maintain my nutrient density with my proper energy restriction? Myth number 3. A lot of people, I think, try this, and that's fine. It is better to do cardio in the morning fasted rather than fed. A study published in the Journal of the International Society of Sports Nutrition, done by Brad Schoenfeld, Alan Aragon, Wilborn, et al. Title was Body Composition Changes Associated with Fasted versus Non-Fasted, i.e. Fed, Aerobic Exercise. The gist of the study was 20 young females split between 2 groups. Group 1 fed a meal before the exercise, and then fasted group number 2, overnight fast. So they were asleep for 8 hours, got up, and then came to work out. The workout was essentially a 1-hour steady state aerobic exercise, meaning they just maintain the same pace, same time, at about 70% of each of their own max heart rate 3 times a week. So whether it was a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, whatever it was, 1-hour steady state aerobic on the treadmill at 70% of their max heart rate. And then both groups were given a recovery shake, same recovery shake, right at the end of the workout. So again, looking at the title, this is body composition changes. The results, breakdown of both groups. So just real quick, just so people aren't wondering, well, this group got more calories than this, that's why. The fasted and fed, if you look at the distribution of protein, carbs, and fats, they were almost identical. There was a difference of approximately 40 calories a day, which is absolutely nothing. There was no significance between the dietary changes between the fasted or fed group. So if you look, both groups showed significant loss of weight and fat mass, so both groups. But no significant between group differences were noted. So that means the body composition changes associated with aerobic exercise in conjunction with a hypocaloric, which means we consume less than what we are putting out. Energy intake is less than energy expenditure, are similar regardless whether or not an individual is fasted prior to training. So based in simple terms, it doesn't seem to be many, if any, difference if you decide to do your cardio fasted, nothing to eat in the morning, or if you had something to eat. It seems to be that most people experience the same weight loss and fat mass loss. So it does seem to be more of a personal preference. For some people, they need to eat. They need to feel they have that energy and that feeling of satiety. Other people want to get it through, get going without having stuff in their stomach, and that's fine. But also remember that this study was about body composition changes. So the calories allow for energy to be used. Body composition and weight may not be any different between the fasted or fed groups. But it doesn't mean that performance won't be affected. So people who continuously try to push harder without any nutrients may experience reduced performance compared to people who are continuously fueling their bodies properly. That long-term may lead to greater weight loss and body composition. There is no study that has seen that, unfortunately, long-term. So there needs to be more studies on that. But if we're talking about body composition, fat loss, weight loss, it doesn't seem to be much of a difference. So when you're looking at all this, how are you supposed to eat now? So we're going to talk a little bit about pre-exercise, during the exercise, post-exercise, and a culmination of what it should be like throughout the day. So just basic exercise nutrition. Carbohydrates are necessary for endurance and cardio training. It's the main fuel for most activities, if not all. Our muscles are full of glycogen, so is our liver. We intake glucose through food and drinks. That glucose, muscle glycogen, gets utilized for our workouts. Light intensity programs, usually people who are doing things anywhere between 30 to 45 minutes, trying to keep their heart rate up, maybe breaking a mild sweat, still able to maybe talk and have a mild conversation in between their workouts. We consider that light intensity. And really, we should be looking at somewhere between 3 to 5 grams of carbohydrates per kilogram per day. So I take one of my clients. She is 70 kilograms, 154 pounds. That means she would consume anywhere between 210 to 350 grams of carbohydrates per day, split between however many meals she feels is necessary for her, whether that's 3 meals, 6 meals, it doesn't matter. It's just getting it in at the proper times and the nutrients in. For somebody who's working at a moderate intensity style program, somewhere in the 60 to 75% heart rate or VO2 range, 60 minutes or more, we're looking at about 5 to 7 grams of carbohydrates per kilogram per day. Now that may seem like a lot to people, but also remember that if we're not fueling for the performance, we're not going to get the benefits of the performance. We're not going to be able to go harder and longer, which is the idea of exercise, not to just do the same thing over and over, but continuously get better, get stronger, get faster, go longer. So our body has to adapt to getting faster, getting stronger, going longer. And the higher intensity programs, people who tend to work out for 1 to 3 hours, if not more, these people also tend to be triathletes, marathon runners, sometimes the biathletes, and we're looking at 6 to 10 and even 10 to 12 grams per kilogram per day, and which is absolutely necessary. A lot of the high-end elite swimmers are usually consuming 10 to 12 grams per kilogram per day, and they're some of the most fit people probably on earth. Carbohydrates, you need to experiment with yourself and what suits you. So it's always good to kind of find a middle ground of carbohydrates. Find something that suits what your workouts look like, your intensity looks like, and try it and see, do you feel sluggish? Do you feel that you haven't eaten enough? And then you can adjust it from there, so you kind of find your Goldilocks range of carbohydrates per gram per kilogram. And that is something an RD can easily do as well. Glycogen depletion, we do need to talk about this. Muscle glycogen is one of the most readily available sources of energy in your body. It's in your muscles, it's in your liver. High-intensity aerobic exercise, going pretty hard for an hour with breaks in between and those kind of things, can actually decrease your liver glycogen by over half. So just after that 1 hour, your liver glycogen is already down to 45% of what's left. 2 hour strenuous workouts, which some of us have done before, can actually deplete glycogen in the liver. And this is where we're actually starting to see that in the specific muscles that are being exercised, whether it's our legs or our arms or our back, we start to see that build up, the fatigue, and unable to perform any longer. So here's a quick study and comparison that a decrease in the muscle glycogen with a moderate carbohydrate diet, and if we go back, the 5 grams per kilogram, they compared people that were taking 5 grams per kilogram and 10 grams per kilogram, so twice as much. So one group, they both, as you can see in the top left box, cyclist on the high carb group, the 10, they were able to maintain glycogen stores higher, but still dropped. The group underneath, at the moderate, at the 5 gram per kilogram, they dropped quicker, but were still able to maintain. The difference, though, is the high group ate twice as many grams of carbohydrates, but there was no difference in performance after day 7. They did 2 trials at 80% VO2 max and saw that there was actually no difference in performance, whether somebody ate 5 grams of carbs per kilogram per day or 10 grams. They just witnessed a greater glycogen depletion. Now, that also doesn't say what happens tomorrow when they need to replenish glycogen. Will they see the same performance? Will the people, the group who had the 5 grams, not be able to perform as well because they're in a more depleted state or not? We don't know, but there was no difference in performance. So for people who think they need extreme high amounts of carbohydrates, may not. So one of the things that came out of the study was a high-carb diet, which they considered greater than 60% of their entire nutrient intake, and a moderate carbohydrate diet, 43 to 50%. They produced relatively the same effects for the high-intensity endurance and performance. So again, despite the higher group having greater glycogen replenishment. So again, they replenished their energy stores in their muscle better than the 5 gram group, but there was still no difference in performance. Again, the study was only done really over 7 days. We all tend to work out longer than 7 days, so we would need to do the study longer, but for performance sake, we never really want to go below 40%. because this is when we see that we're not getting enough carbs and we can see decreased performance. So for those of you who try to go on a lower carb diet, you may see quicker response and weight loss because of carbohydrates affinity for water and a lot of that water weight, but performance may be decreased. We may not be able to go as long, as hard, as better throughout the day and during our workouts, which then slows down our metabolism, slows down our results, and then eventually we don't see the results that we want. So it may be better to keep a moderate to high carbohydrate diet and work on actually performing better so we can continuously see those benefits. Protein intake. We need protein in our diets. We do recommend people consume more protein now than ever before. The Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics recommends 0.8 grams per kilogram. We recommend a little bit more. Again, maintaining the same energy intake, but for active people, we do need to consume more protein because as active as some of us are much more active than others, we need the protein to help muscle repair, to help rebuild the muscle breakdown, prevent extreme muscle breakdown, and help those muscles grow appropriately so we can, again, continue to push through, push longer, push harder through our workouts. The example that I have, again, with the 70-kilogram client, 154 pounds, if that person was to consume 1.6 grams per kilogram per day of protein, that would be about 112 grams of protein per day, which, if you broke that up into 5 meals, that's really only about 20 to 25 grams of protein, which is actually done by about 3 to 4 ounces of lean meat at every meal, assuming that you were to eat 3 or 4 ounces of lean meat at every meal. Maybe not. It could be 3 to 4 ounces of cheese, a few ounces of nuts, dairy, whatever suits you. But we do need to see more protein because protein actually is showing that people that have higher diets in protein, around 1.4, 1.7 grams per kilogram, actually see greater weight loss. And if you saw from that, if you remember from the study we showed about 10 minutes ago, the group that did the resistance training, the cardio, and had a higher protein diet actually saw the greatest weight loss and fat mass loss. So protein needs, again, 1.2 to 1.6, and all the way up actually to 2.0 grams especially for people who are incorporating resistance training in their workouts. Needs can actually be easily met through a normal diet. If you're consuming lean meats, soy, nuts, tofu, cheeses, dairy, you can easily meet your protein needs. And those whole proteins actually have nutrients in them that sometimes protein supplements don't. So if you are not able to meet them for whatever reason, a protein supplement certainly can help. Very easy, very convenient. But also excessive protein, things beyond 2.5 for us if we're not high elite level athletes, has shown to have no actual benefit, and we usually just excrete it at that point. So sticking with the 1.2 to 1.6, finding out your range that is appropriate for you and how much you can eat, seems to be a good range for people to start out and kind of tinker with. So again, if we go back to our 70-kilogram client, they consume 5 grams of carbs per kilogram. That's 350 grams of carbs per day, 4 calories per gram. So per day, that'd be 1,400 kcals. And then if that person consumed 1.6 grams of protein, 112 grams total for the day. There's 4 calories per gram of protein, so that'd be about 450 calories of protein. So we're looking at about 1,850 calories coming from carbs and proteins, assuming that that person decided to stick with those ranges. Fat needs. We absolutely need fat. It is essential for life. It is essential for protection of organs, homeostasis, thermogenesis, keeping everything tightly bound, information being sent from one neuron to the next. And really 20 to 30% of our total kcal should be from fat. It shows that people who tend to eat a little bit less than 20%, closer to 15%, actually see detrimental effects because a lot of our vitamins, A, D, E, and K, are fat-soluble vitamins. Those vitamins play a big role in how we perform throughout the day and how our organs, how our muscles, how our bones form and function. And when we consume less fat, we see less nutrients being consumed and being absorbed. So we do need a certain amount of fat in us so we can maintain those nutrient levels. We want to look for diets rich in mono and polyunsaturated fats. And here's a little chart for you to kind of give you an idea of where you're getting saturated, monounsaturated, and polyunsaturated fats from. So here's some general recommendations that is put out there right now. 7 to 12 grams per kilogram, and again, we're looking at moderate to heavy endurance training. Lighter, we're looking at about 3 to 5. So if you're training for an hour a day at a certain percentage, going even, again, 4 to 6 hours per day or more, 10 to 12 grams per kilogram. Protein, 15 to 25%, that 1.2 to 1.4, and then sometimes even up to 1.6, depending on how many carbs we're actually consuming and how much fat. And we do want to keep the fat to about 20 to 30% of our daily intake, and that's for guys and girls, men and women alike. Less than 15%, like I said, has shown to not be beneficial, and it's going to compromise the essential fatty acids, which we absolutely need in our diet, and the fat-soluble vitamins. Carbs during exercise. Greater than 90 minutes actually shows that there is some benefit to consuming carbohydrates during exercise. Around 60 to 45 minutes of workout, they're showing no benefit to actually consuming like a Gatorade or an Accelerate or lemonade or anything like that. But usually if you're going to go for greater than 90 minutes, this is where we're actually seeing benefits for continued endurance and continued workouts, excelling. 6 to 8% carbohydrate solution with electrolytes. So to break that down, that's roughly what a Gatorade or an Accelerate or a Powerade looks like. It's roughly 6 to 8%, depending on how many ounces you're drinking. The electrolytes are necessary. The salt, potassium, chloride. We lose that in sweat, and we need to replenish those for continued muscle action, continued nerve transmissions. If we're going longer than the 90 minutes, again, 30 to 60 grams of carbs per hour, about 150 to 250 calories per hour could be good for us because those carbohydrates, whether they're coming from a drink or a quick snack during the workout, actually helps replenish some of this glycogen, actually helps maybe stave off using those stored glycogen stores so we can use the energy that we're consuming and at the very end go a little bit harder and use those reserve glycogen stores. And that's what a lot of elite athletes try to do. They try to consume a certain amount of food, carb load a few nights before, or fat load, so they can use that stored energy, and then all the extra muscle glycogen they can use for those last few miles, those last push, those last sprints. So again, eating to perform for everyday life. That's what we're looking to do. And the exact needs, of course, are going to vary. So you need to play around with what calorie range, what carb range works for you. Is it too much, too little? Got to find that Goldilocks range. And this is just where you just tinker and trial and error comes into play. Like I said, consuming sports drinks for workouts, 45 to 60 minutes or less, and at a low to moderate intensity, 45 to 70%, 45 to 65%, they're showing no benefit in actual performance. We're showing that a lot of studies are saying that you're not going harder, you're not able to go any longer. So if you're just going to stick to a basic workout and keep it low intensity for less than 60 minutes, stick to water. You'll replace the water that you lose out in sweat, and then later you can replace the salt and chloride. So it may not be necessary to consume the calorie drinks if we're not going to go hard enough to actually utilize the calories and carbs. Protein during exercise. More research, again, showing a small amount of protein, about 6 to 10 grams to a sports drink, and some of them actually have them made already in Durox, I believe, is one. Accelerate, maybe another, actually have a little bit of protein added to them. With carbohydrates and electrolytes already added, can provide additional benefits. Some of those benefits are extended endurance, potential reduction in muscle breakdown. So muscle breakdown is a good thing because that means we can rebuild them. But if we can prevent extreme muscle breakdown with that extra protein, then we don't see as much soreness. We don't feel as lethargic the next day, so we may be able to go longer, go quicker, sooner, which also then leads to potential increase in speed of recovery if we can reduce the breakdown. The downside of having protein in a drink, usually there's an unpleasant taste and mouthfeel. Carbs can dissolve very easily. Unfortunately, proteins don't necessarily in water-based solutions, so sometimes it leaves a gritty taste, and that can actually reduce people, reduce the drinking and the intake of that nutrient. So there's always a plus and minus to it. Dr. Ivy in 2003 did a study for 9 trained male cyclists, and they were going at 45 to 75% of the VO2, and then for 3 hours, and then they would go at 85% of their VO2 until fatigue. So during the 3 hours, they were either consuming a carb and protein drink, just a carb drink, or a placebo. In the placebo group, they lasted about 10 minutes to exhaustion. So after the 3 hours, they were able to go about another 10 minutes at the 85% VO2. The carb group, because of that increased energy, the carbs that they were taken in, they were able to go almost 20 minutes longer to exhaustion. But the carb protein group, as you can see, actually went to just over 25, about 26 minutes. So in comparison, they were able to more than double compared to the placebo group, go longer, over twice as long with carb and protein in that drink. So if you break it down, it probably wasn't any more calorie dense, if any more calorie dense than the carb drink. And of course, it wasn't any more calorie dense than the placebo. So they were all relatively isocaloric, all relatively in the same calories. But the carb protein were able to go over twice as long. So if it's all relatively the same calories they were taking, but they could go twice as long, they expended more calories. They were able to go longer, go harder. So it makes sense that if we're going to go for long workouts, high-intense workouts, it may benefit with the carb protein drink so we can continue going a little bit longer, a little bit harder, and see those increases in performance in cardio and endurance training. Post-exercise, again, carbohydrate and protein intake, increasing insulin levels better than carbs. We want an increased insulin level because insulin helps with greater glycogen resynthesis, being able to have that better recovery, increase those glycogen muscle stores, and increase delivering nutrients. So imagine insulin as a train that's delivering nutrients to every muscle. It pushes through the muscles, it pushes through the blood, and it helps deliver those nutrients better. And carbs with protein does that better than potentially just carbs alone. So your post-exercise shake or drink or food should have some protein base to it. It takes about 24 hours to fully replenish muscle glycogen. So there's benefit from eating adequate carbs to match activity level about 15 to 30 minutes post-exercise. The muscles are converting glucose to glycogen 3 times faster. up to 3 times faster than any other time. So just after the workout, not even during, your muscles are working at a very, very fast rate, 3 times faster than normally. So this would just make sense that if they're going to go harder to start replenishing that breakdown and start replenishing those lost stores, it would make sense to, in that time, replenish those stores. So to replenish them, you want to look at about 1 to 1.5 grams of carbs per kilogram. So for the 70 kilogram person, you want to get at least 70 grams of carbohydrates in you in that post-workout shake to replenish the glycogen stores that you may have lost. Again, we're also looking at a higher intensity workout here. For those who go a little bit lower intensity for a little bit less, you can probably shoot for about 0.5 grams of carbs per kilogram. But for those of us who go 60 minutes or longer very hard, we're looking at about 1 to 1.5 grams. In that post-exercise meal, we're looking at about 20 grams. There has been a lot of discussion to how much protein can my body take. Is it 40 grams? Is it 10? Is it 20? Is it an innumerable amount? More research is showing that at 20 grams of a whey protein or a complete protein, that's a good number and good amount to actually help pull in all the proper amino acids into our system. So if you're getting a whey protein or a full meal in front of you that has a lot of complete proteins around, about 20 grams should suffice. If there's one thing that you can take away from this entire presentation, a lot of people say breakfast is the most important meal of the day. I would personally have to argue that and say your recovery nutrition and your post-exercise meal may be just as important, if not more so, because your muscles and your body is primed to take in those nutrients, feed off them, and utilize them to the best of its ability. Why hold off or why feed ourselves with junk that's not going to let us perform any better the next day? Get the carbs in, get the protein in when you can. Beware, though. You want to make sure that when you're working out, you can experience depleted glycogen stores. This is for very, very increased long-duration workouts where we don't feed ourselves properly. Increased protein breakdown if we're not actually feeding with carbs and proteins during the workout. Negative muscle protein bounce, which is a bad thing. That means where our bodies are actually using muscle and protein to feed itself. We don't want to use our muscles to feed itself. We want muscle breakdown, but we also want to feed those back up. We don't want the muscles to break down and then have to be utilized as fuel. So if we don't bring the body back into that recovery mode with the proper nutrients, several consequences. Using muscle as energy so we don't see those gains that we want. Reduction in resting metabolic rate. Decreased performance, decreased workouts, decreased results. Prolonged muscle soreness and fatigue. The symptoms of overtraining, having that feeling of, oh, I can't do this anymore, or I was able to do this last week, but I can't now for some reason. Minimal gains in muscle mass, changes to fat mass, even despite a very good design training program. You know it worked before, but it's not now. It could be the nutrition. And then the poor athletic performance, but poor daily performance. Maintenance nutrition. So 2 hours after the workout, you want to start looking at, again, consuming lower GI carbs about every 2 to 3 hours with protein. You're going to go for a 1-to-1 or 2-to-1 ratio of carbs to protein. So if you're going to have 10 grams of protein, try to shoot for 10 grams to 20 grams of carbs. 20 grams of protein to 20 grams to 40 grams of carbs. You want to replenish those glycogen stores so we can go again the next day. More and more research is stating that it's not really a big difference between 6 meals or 5 meals or 3 meals or 2 meals. A lot of research before said the more meals you eat consistently throughout the day, the higher the metabolic rate. That may be for, short-term length, but it's looking more like if you're able to get the overall daily balance of nutrients that you need, whether that's 3 or 4 or 5 meals, that is sufficient for recovery and performance. Fluid intake is important. We'll just talk briefly about this. Most of us are usually in a state of dehydration. We can go living without food for a week and a half to 2 weeks. We can only go for about 2 to 3 days without water. So it makes sense that we need water constantly. And whether you're getting that from tea or coffee or out of the tap or from insensible items like food, that's fine. The whole idea is to keep ourselves hydrated well. Pre-exercise. So before our exercise, we're looking at about 5 to 7 milliliters per kilogram every 4 hours. So again, for the 70-kilogram person, that's about 350 to 490 milliliters, which broken down is about 12 to 16 fluid ounces. So it's really 1.5 cups to 2 cups of water that you would need about 4 hours out from your workouts. And then, if necessary, if you're still feeling dehydrated, 3 to 5 milliliters per kilogram, 2 hours before the workout can help, again, with feeling hydrated, having the water that's necessary. During the exercise, every 10 to 15 minutes or as necessary. Some people are heavy drinkers. Other people can only take a few sips, and that's fine. But having a regular routine of every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, every 15 minutes, going back for water, because we sweat when we work out, and we lose that water that we need with nutrients like sodium and chlorine and potassium in that sweat. So if we can replenish that water, we will see greater results. We can see better performance. Post-exercise, the old rule used to be drink a pint for every pound lost. So drink 16 ounces for every 16 ounces lost. Really, what they're looking at now is drink 150%. So again, 50% of that 100% originally. So as an example, if I take my 70-kilogram person and weigh them before their workout, and then we weigh them after their workout, they lost 1 kilogram, which is equivalent to about 2.2 pounds. So we know that they lost about 2.2 pounds in sweat because we measured them right before and right after. So if that's about 2.2 pounds, about 2 pounds, 16 ounces a pound. So like I said, replace 16 ounces of water with 16 ounces of weight. So a pint and a pound. 2 pounds would be 32 ounces. So we'd want to replace 150% of that. So we would add another 50% on top of that 32 ounces, which would be 48 fluid ounces. So for every 2 pounds of sweat somebody loses, you want to replenish about 48 fluid ounces of water so you can rehydrate yourself better, more quickly, more efficiently. So for the weight loss, I'm using my 70-kilogram client, 47 years old, lightly active throughout the day, and we're going to go through kind of how I would do this for my client and how you can get an idea of doing it yourself if you want. Max heart rate for that client, again, is always 220 minus that person's age, so their max heart rate would be approximately about 173, 170 beats per minute. They're lightly active throughout the day, like I said, so they do just typical daily work. They may be moving throughout their regular job, sitting down occasionally. Then they train at about 60% of their max heart rate, so moderate intensity for about 45 minutes to an hour. So we don't really need to concentrate on getting this person electrolytes and a carb drink during the workout, just maintain this person's hydration. So we want to look at the person's total daily energy expenditure, which is equal to the thermic effect of food, TEF, plus that person's resting metabolic rate, RMR, plus their physical activity. And usually we add another thing called NEAT, their non-exercise, which just basically means how much energy you're expending standing and just existing. But those equations, usually an RD does for you. Body Track and other places can actually check your RMR through metabolic cart, their metabolic equipment. So this person's RMR is 1,800 calories. Pretty good for this person, especially at this age. Physical activity, which means during the workout they burn about 500 calories. and their activities of daily living, so just kind of working out, doing their stuff around home, burn another 600 calories. The thermic effect of food differs between everybody. It's anywhere between 5 to 7.5%, all the way up to maybe 10. So we'll go with about 5% of food, 5% thermic effect. So it's about another 145 calories. So if you look at their total daily energy expenditure, it's roughly 3,000 calories per day. So that means that this person consumed the same amount of calories, about 3,000 a day, and then worked off doing their activities of daily living, during their physical activity, keep their metabolic rate at about, again, all of that adding up to 3,000. This person would neither gain nor lose weight. But this person wants to lose about 14 pounds in 3 months. So after speaking with the RD, the goal is to do about 1 to 2 pounds of weight loss per week. So that's anywhere between 7 to 14 weeks, and the goal is 12. Completely doable. We are going to start off with this person with a 500 calorie reduction per day. So the one thing we also want to monitor is one thing you can monitor for yourself for at least the first few weeks, if not month. Monitor your mood, your activity level, your stress, your performance, and also your cravings. Write down in a journal, day one, put small things to remind you, how did you feel during your workout, after your workout, later on in the day, your activity level, how hard did you go, how long did you go, stress levels, was there stuff happening at work, at home, was it more so today than the other day, your performance, did you feel that you could run just as long or go just as hard on the treadmill or elliptical or bike or in your workout as you did the other day, or even longer. So monitor the performance. Was it increased, decreased, the same? And then check your cravings. Did you crave certain foods? At what time? Easy to write these things down because you can look back at it and say, okay, I understand my pattern now. I crave foods at these times. My stress tends to go up during this event or these times. My performance has actually increased. So you can get an idea of where you stand on your nutrition and your workout, so you can actually tinker a little bit better. So this person wants to lose weight. This person also wants to continuously perform well, though, in the workout. So we want to look at about 60% carbs, 15% protein, and 25% fat. Again, we don't want to go lower than 20, so 20 to 30. Find a nice middle ground, 25% fat. 15% protein, so we'll start off looking, is that enough for this person? And 60% carbs. A lot of people say, oh, wow, that's a lot of carbs. There's no way I would consume that much. Well, remember, that percentage reflects the deficit as well. So it's not 60% of 3,000 calories. It's 60% of that 3,000 minus the 500 we're doing a day. So it comes to 2,500 calories we're going to consume. So it's 60% of 2,500. So yes, the diet is predominantly carbohydrates, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it is a lot of carbohydrates. So again, that person's in a moderate activity. Carbohydrates, we're going to go for about 5 to 6. So that's anywhere between 350, 370 to about 400 grams of carbs. So we'll say about 375 to tinker with right now throughout the day, which is about 1,500 calories. Protein, we're going to start this person off at about 1.3. Like I said, between 1.2 to 1.6 is good for that increased protein, increased muscle gain, increased fat loss. So we'll shoot for about 1.3 grams right now, which is 91 grams for that 70 kilogram person, and that equals 364 calories. And then fat, we want to shoot for about 1 gram per kilogram. That's kind of a baseline. You don't want to go any lower than 1 gram. So we're going to stick with 1 gram, which gives us 70 grams, because 70 times 1, and that gives us 630 calories. If we add all that up, we actually get approximately 2,400 and I believe 94 calories, which is 6 calories shy of 2,500. So we're right on point with this person to start off to see. At this time, we want to get this person to monitor their performance, their weight loss, their mood, their cravings, still contribute to seeing how they feel with this new diet plan. So the food choices that we'd be recommending, again, more nutrient-dense foods. vegetables, fruits, lean meats, nuts, whole grains, healthy fats from oils and fish, staying away from certain processed foods, fast foods, really trying to see, because this is the goal. So if we're going to go for a specific goal, we better eat for this specific goal. Keeping hydrated throughout the day, reminding this person that they need to consume, 5 to 7 milliliters, so we would figure that out for them. This is how much water you should consume before your workout. Let's weigh you before and after your workout to see what your weight change or water loss, so we can replace that water for proper hydration and proper cellular activity. And then remind that person that the water can come from tap, coffee, tea, food, a whole bunch of other things that water comes from. So in summary, we would, again, check with that person every month for 3 months and then make any changes we would need to after about 3 to 4 months. So the summary that you guys should take away from this: find out your body composition, your current weight, your resting metabolic rate. All this can be done. If you train a body track, you can get it done here. Discuss with an RD to figure out your total daily energy expenditure based on those numbers. Having those numbers present, having the idea of what your workouts look like, the intensities, the duration, the RD can actually figure out your daily expenditure and your breakdown of how that should be established and put forth. Record your activity, your duration, intensity, and routines, so you can refer back to them as to, was this a good routine? Did I feel good during it? Was it long enough? Was it short? Was it too short? Could I have gone harder? And put that with your food. Put that with your food plan. If you're eating this and you're working out like this, do they match? If I'm eating properly, I should be able to work out better and properly. If not, something is amiss. And then figure out your goal and time frame. Keep it realistic. Keep it achievable. Keep it a SMART goal. Knowing something you can achieve that's not too easy, but not out of complete depth. Shoot for that goal. You want to eat for that goal. You want to work out for that goal. And if that's weight loss, if that's improved performance, whatever that is, really go for it. Go full out for it, because you'll be really happy with yourself if you do. With your RD, we can find the necessary macronutrient breakdown. Find your necessary hydration status. A lot of people underconsume water. More people underconsume. They are hypohydrated rather than hyperhydrated. We can find the proper hydration status and proper amount of water that you need to consume throughout the day across the board, so you don't overconsume water, which actually can be an issue, and you don't stay in a dehydrated state, which can hinder performance. More and more research shows that if you're starting off in dehydrated state, your performance will suffer. Your workouts will suffer. That means your results will suffer. Again, continue to monitor everything that you can for about a month, a few weeks, to at least get an idea of a pattern. If you can see increases and decreases and things, and then reassess after 4 to 6 months. Do it all over again. Check yourself. See what needs to change, if anything. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to send them over to Steve at BodyTrack, and I'll be glad to answer them. I know Steve has my information. I really appreciate you guys listening into this webinar. If you have anything that you want to bring up or any ideas of webinars that you would like to hear about, please feel free to send BodyTrack information, and we'll be glad to do them for you. Otherwise, have a good night, and hope to see you guys at our next webinar. Take care.